Well, hey everybody, it is time for us to jump in with another post-show recap. We're so glad that you guys are joining us. Happy New Year! It is 2023, and that sounds really, really weird to be saying. But we are glad that you're joining us for another episode here. And we got Matt back.
Hey.
He's with us after a little bit of a 2-3 week break. So it's good to have Matt joining us back. And then we got a special guest with us today. We've got Pastor Luke over here. Pastor Luke shared the message with us this past weekend, so he gets to jump into the hot seat as we jump in with questions about this past week's message.
The hot seat.
Dun dun dun.
I'm immediately scared.
Hey, as a reminder, make sure that you're sending us your questions after each week's message so that we can use those as we are going through and diving into a little bit deeper into the message. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope that you had a great Christmas. Hope that you had a great start to the new year. And we're excited about what God's going to be doing here at Upward this upcoming year, and excited for you to join us on this journey as well. Yeah. All right, guys. So we say we dive in a little bit there. Luke, why don't you just real briefly, man, just kind of give us a quick recap of this past week's message.
Sure.
I got something that I got a word that Matt keeps throwing at me over here. Meaningless.
Meaningless. Yeah. Hopefully the message wasn't meaningless.
That's right. No, you did a great job.
But yeah, so no, we just really just looked at two completely different guys in the Bible. One was King Solomon, who had everything at his fingertips, who, was the richest, wisest man, to ever live. And he had everything right there, yet he still found himself saying that life was meaningless, that nothing made him happy. It was like he was constantly chasing the wind. And then we looked at Paul, who was the complete opposite, who had life going completely against him. Like it seemed like every time he turned around, he was in prison, or he was being beaten, or he was shipwrecked, or something was happening to him, yet he still found himself saying, I don't lose heart. He still had this attitude that I wish that I had on a daily basis,
right.
And so we just kind of looked at those two guys, and then we talked about 4 ways that we can really shift our focus. And that, Paul easily could have focused on just all the things that were going against him, but instead he chose to focus on the things of God. He chose to focus on the things that were eternal. And so we talked about how we could shift our focus from off of our struggles, off of our circumstances, and onto the things of God. And so there's 4 things where we could pray, letting heaven become our reality instead of the world becoming our reality. That we could serve, find a place to plug in, because serving was one of the quickest ways that we can shift our focus off of ourselves and onto the things that matter. And we talked about joining a team, and we talked about giving. Giving's another way that we can just make sure that our sight and our eyes stay where they need to be, and then sharing Jesus.
Yep.
If we really believe that hell and heaven are real, then we've got to step up in that area.
Very good.
By doing those 4 things, I believe that that's something that we can shift our focus and help us keep our eyes on what really matters. So, yeah.
Real timely message for all of us, in the idea that, hey, we are starting a new year, and with the new year, oftentimes comes those ideas of new beginnings and what are the things that we really want to focus in on. And for a lot of us, it is easy for us to kind of get off kilter, get off base, have our focus in the wrong areas. And you spent kind of the first half of the message talking about King Solomon and talking about his words in Ecclesiastes, where he talked about life was meaningless, and you threw out several things there about him. He's the richest guy in the world, known as one of the wisest people in the world that the world's ever known. And yet he still found himself in a place of where everything was meaningless.
Yeah.
I think about, kind of where we're at today. And where, just kind of where I'm at, we can often find ourselves in a place of constantly pursuing things that don't really matter, whether that's, whether it's just more stuff, new vehicles, new houses, all this stuff's nice and not bad to have.
Yeah.
But if that's our sole purpose for living, just to make more money, if that's our sole purpose for doing things, then we're going to be left feeling like things are meaningless.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I love that you started with Solomon, because it was like, that sounds horrible, but I didn't feel alone.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us is ever just like every day we're like, yes, life is great.
Right.
And I don't remember how you got to it, but I remember when you said, go to work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, cut the grass Saturday, Sunday, go to and then repeat. And I think the thing that really hit me in that was, and I grew up in church, and so I think it doesn't matter how many times you hear it, yeah, all the stuff that we try to cram into that cycle shouldn't be the measurements that we're using, but for some reason we still go back to those same things to try to figure out how to be happy. So that just really hit me, and I loved that you didn't just remind us, yeah, that's not the measurement, let's pray, but you said, hey, here's what we can actually do to shift our focus onto what's important.
Why do you think it is so easy for us, or maybe it's maybe it's just natural for us to to focus more on the things that are right here in front of us, the things that are right here that are earthly, versus the things that are eternal. You mentioned about the idea about, especially when it came to King Solomon, that there was an expectation that as you pursue things that they're going to make you happy, and yet he was still talking about being left unfulfilled. But why do you think that's our natural tendency to go that direction?
I think it's our natural tendency because that's what we're told success is.
Okay.
Success is how much stuff you have.
Yeah.
What you can brag about, what you can say I've done or I've tried, or I think that we're told that that's how you measure success. So it's easy for us to get our focus on, well, if I want to be successful, then I have to have the house, I have to have the boat, I have to have the lake house, I have to have this. We're really, and I mean, if you want to measure that by the world's terms, then sure. But you're going to find yourself chasing the wind, like Solomon said, that he was, because you're never going to get enough because there's someone else who's always going to have more. So I think that's why it's so easy to get in that trap. Well, I've got to be busy because busy means successful. I've got to, if I'm not doing this and I'm not making that money, then I can't get to this point. And so we shift our focus onto those things instead of the things that really matter. That's really going to fulfill us. So.
Feels like that we find ourselves into that comparison game way too often, comparing where I'm at versus where you're at. And if we're in similar stages of life, there's a book that we're supposed to follow, that manual that we're supposed to follow that says, hey, by the time you're 25, you should be here in life. And by the time you're 35, you should be here in life. And if you're not, then you're behind. We compare, vacations, we compare status with a job title or stuff like that. And you're right, it does leave us, because once you finally hit that goal, well, now I got to get to the next one, right? I mean, I kind of bring it back to the idea of, a salary or making money, right? You get to the place, I remember graduating college, I thought, hey, if I can ever make this amount of money right here, then man, I'm set, I'm golden, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
But then I made that amount of money and it's like, well, now I need more.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you're constantly chasing that never-ending goal there.
For sure.
That's good.
I think a lot of it, I want to say, like, for some reason, the things that we celebrate in culture and society, it's those things. Because I look at, even if you look at the movies that we watch, really, at the end of the day, I don't think that there's anybody that would go, yeah, I think that all those things and that stuff is what's going to make you happy. I don't think anybody believes that. But for some reason, those are the things that we celebrate.
Yeah.
And that's not really helpful, other than I wonder why. Like, I don't understand, why is that what we celebrate if we all really do know?
Yeah, for sure.
That's not what's bringing happiness.
Maybe partly because that's what's tangible. That's what's right there in front of us. And to bring it back to your message, that's really where our faith and reality in the world that we live in kind of collide at.
Yeah.
It's I know that I'm living for something more and bigger and greater than what's right here in front of me, but I don't always see that. Right. And what I can see is the things that are measurable according to the world that I live in right now.
Yeah.
And that's a tough place to be.
Oh, for sure.
But you rolled it right into Paul. You kind of rolled out of, Solomon's like talking about all these things that he's worked for and that he's done, and how all of it's meaningless. Yeah. Meaningless, chasing the wind. But then you roll into Paul, whose circumstances were vastly different from King Solomon. You mentioned that he had been beaten and arrested multiple times, and was near death multiple times. And yet this guy is still in a place of where he seems to have the secret to life, so to speak, of keeping that fresh focus. And you wrote and you said this statement, and I didn't want to move past it.
Sure.
We've all got problems. We all got situations. We all got struggles that we're facing. And you said that the secret to solving your problem is to have something in your life that is bigger than your problem. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit more?
I think it all comes down to our focus. I mean, it's so easy to get caught up Because life's not fun sometimes.
What?
A lot of times.
What?
Meaningless.
We go through life and we experience things that just seem so big, and it's so easy for us to, focus on our problems instead of the God who's walking with our problems. He never said we're not going to have problems.
Yep.
He never said that, when you ask me into your life and I become the Lord of your life, he never says you, therefore, once you say yes, no more problems. But he does promise to walk us through that. And so I think when we have something in our life that's bigger than anything we're ever going to go through, it kind of helps us balance that out. And it doesn't mean we're not going to have bad days. It doesn't mean that there aren't going to be days where our circumstances, we're not going to be able to say, man, God's with me. No, sometimes those are terrible.
Yeah.
But there's still this peace that comes with it when you know that you have the God of the universe that's over whatever it is you're going through, walking with you through that. So I think just being able to say, I have something in my life, I have someone in my life bigger than anything I'm ever going to go through, there's some peace that comes with that.
I think about, as you're saying that, as we enter into this new year, I think oftentimes it's easy, and it's easy for me to think about, okay, new year, new focus, there's some excitement about that. There is the hope that, hey, maybe this year I'm actually going to stick to one of the resolutions that I'm throwing out there. Probably not, but I mean, there's that hope, right? There's the excitement, there's the anticipation.
Yeah.
But also, there are a large number of people, maybe watching right now, that as they enter into 2023, there isn't that hope. There isn't that excitement.
For sure.
2022, the end of it, the whole year of it, man, it was a rough year.
Yeah.
That was a challenging year. And it's not like that just by the flip of a calendar going from December 31st to January 1st, that immediately changes everything.
Sure.
Right? Those same difficult circumstances are there. Real problems, right? Real problems, real struggles that people are going through. Not, we got a small conflict at work or whatever. But I mean, real struggles, trying to figure out, man, how am I going to survive this?
Yeah.
The statement that you made, the key, to navigating through our problems is to have something bigger that we focus on that's bigger than our problems. That holds true regardless of what you're facing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just the small stuff. It's for the major, life-changing, earth-shattering, life-altering problems that wreck us to our core.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I love when you talked about, I don't remember where the scripture is, but just not focusing on the seen, but focusing on the unseen. So not the temporary, but the eternal. And this, I don't know that you quoted the song "Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus." I love that song. I was like, oh yeah, we should sing it right now.
Go for it.
I almost interrupted your message.
Maybe we should stop right now. We'll just let Matt sing the song for us.
Sing the whole
No,
chorus,
we're
right?
good. But that lyric, "Turn your eyes on Jesus, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in light of His glory and grace." And I can't remember if you said it Sunday or not, but it's something along the lines of, it's one thing to say it, and then it's another thing to actually try to live that out. And I think it comes down to really being intentional of, I'm not just going to fix my eyes on this temporary stuff.
Right.
And I remember a message, and I can't remember who gave it, but I remember the visual. They had this rope that went for eternity, and they had a little section of it just taped off. And that represented our time here, And then he just started pulling this rope, and it just kept going and going. And that's the eternity that we get to live after this. And we get so caught on that little spot, that little thing that we're in the middle of right now, because we're in the middle of it, and it makes sense. But to be able to be intentional about realizing there is eternity, and we believe that. So fixing our eyes on the unseen. Loved that verse.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that doesn't mean that we're not going to have days where we focus on everything that we're seeing right now, But, I mean, big surprise again, we are human. And this thing is way easier said than done, But when we have God, walking this with us, it does there is that peace that comes with it. That's like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I may have a bad day or I may have bad moments, but
Yeah.
you know, as long as I can shift my focus, because sometimes, I don't know, sometimes the scene, I think we need to see the scene sometimes just to kind of put things in perspective that, yeah, he's still with me, you know? So.
Focusing on the unseen is a statement that, you know, obviously is within Scripture. So you would expect, you know, at some point in time, a pastor, preacher, church to say, hey, don't just keep your eyes focused on what's down here. You know, think about the eternal. You know, that's what we're living for, right? Great statement. But then that becomes the how. Okay, that okay, I get it. I should do that. I ain't got a clue how I'm supposed to work my way around that. You gave us 4 action items, 4 steps that we could take to be able to do that. Which for me is, you know, kind of great. And now I've got something that I can actually walk out of here and I can do. The first one you said is pray. Most Christians would say, yeah, okay, pray. Blew my mind, man. Where did that come? Where did you pull that out of Scripture? But the idea of praying, that is, man, that's our communication tool. Right, but you said some interesting things about prayer as well. You kind of you said it's not just telling God things He already knows, right? But you focused on some other aspects of prayer too. Sure. What were some of those things that you wanted to share?
So, one thing I've always said is that I'm never going to speak anything that hasn't applied to me first.
Sure.
And I know that I've found myself, especially when it comes to prayer, just being really self-centered, really just like, God, this is what I need you to do for me.
Yeah.
But that's not prayer. Like, yeah, prayer is a conversation, obviously. But so many times we make it a one-sided conversation.
Right.
And, you know, David, when you look at in any of the Psalms, I mean, there's a process that he goes through.
Right.
And it's comforting to know that that King David, who was a man after God's own heart, had those thoughts where he was like, God, where are you? Like, why have you left me? And he goes through these, and like I said, there are times where he was ready just to hurt people, which is also comforting because there are times where I'm ready to do that.
Yeah, what was the illustration that you gave of how we wanted to pray with some fleas and a camel?
Yeah, so just asking God to send the fleas of 1,000 camels to their armpits.
That's it. That's right. I don't know that I've ever prayed that exact prayer, but I prayed something similar.
I wanted to, yeah. But it's comforting to know that a man after God's own heart,
right,
even though he may not have said that, like send fleas, but he had those thoughts.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that he's worked through that process that says, but God, I trust you. You know, at the end of the day, it's what you want. It's your God. And so I think that has been comforting to me to know that prayer is a process. Yeah, it's okay to come to him and to pitch a fit every once in a while, but you know, as long as we're coming back at the end of it and like, but God, I trust you, you know? So I think that's one of the things. It's just kind of even not letting ourselves and our pity parties and our me-centered stuff hijack that process with him. Not letting that hijack our prayer time. So,
so prayer time, it's okay for me to be completely honest about how I'm feeling.
Because guess what? He already knows.
He already knows.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also allowing God to change us and shape and mold our hearts and our mind and our focus. Having that set focus in there.
Yeah.
That's good.
I like that. You also talked about serving.
Yeah.
Why is serving so important?
Because we're doing something that's not about us. Or it shouldn't be about us. Sometimes we do make it about us. But I think, I'm trying to remember, I should know because I preached this. No,
it was a couple of days ago.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think a lot of times we get so caught up in coming to church to get.
Mm-hmm.
But when we finally have that opportunity to take what we've received and then pour it back out, that shifts our focus again off of us and onto the things that matter, you know, whether that's coffee or greeting or security or worship. We're doing something to help create an atmosphere where people can come and experience what we've experienced. So I think when we serve, we're taking our focus off of us and putting it on where it belongs. So,
you know, the whole overarching idea of your message is, been this idea of taking a fresh approach, taking a fresh focus towards life as we're going into this coming year. And as you have walked us through Ecclesiastes with King Solomon and rolled us into Paul, and taking some of those items of not focusing on the earthly but focus on the eternal, and then you're giving us these action items. A lot of it appears to be this driving force of get the focus off of you, get the focus off of yourself, and put the focus onto others, put the focus onto your relationship with Christ, and allow that to shape the direction of your life.
Yeah.
It's really good, really good. You want to take the next one?
Yeah, I was just gonna say about serving, like,
Oh yeah,
and I'm sure
Why'd
y'all
you do that?
I'm sure y'all have seen it too. I've noticed it, especially in student ministry, like just in being in church for so long, like the kids and the students and the adults that get plugged into serving. It shifts their focus, and those are the students that are still connected, that are still plugged in, that are still serving Jesus. And I think, just to tag on to that, when you shift your focus like that, that's when that fulfillment kicks in.
For sure.
Which is really what we're missing when we're, everything is meaningless. It doesn't feel like there's any meaning to it because you're just inside of yourself. So that's what I was going to say about serving. It's just
to kind of highlight that, if I can. So I've got my 10-year-old daughter, Hope, right? And she attends children's ministry on Thursday nights, and she goes to her group and goes to her class on Thursday nights. But then on Sunday mornings, she comes and she gets a chance to serve. In the first service, she'll serve in the 2-year-old room, and in the second service, she'll serve in the nursery with the babies. And she absolutely loves it. I mean, like there's nothing that she looks forward to more in the course of a week than going and serving in those rooms. It's been a couple of months ago now. We had some family that came into town, and what we were going to do is that me and Danielle, we obviously had to be at church early that day. She was helping to lead worship, and so I was working. So we were going to church early. Family wasn't going to come until the last service, so we just was like, hey, we'll just let the girls sleep in, and they can come to church with you. So we're telling Hope that night, or Saturday night before we go to church the next day, and she breaks down crying. I mean, like, seriously, she is upset. She goes, I understand what you're doing. I understand why you would do that, but please don't take serving away from me. It means that much to her because she has found this purpose. She has found this connection there at 10 years old of when she's not there one week, she misses the kids that are in that 2-year-old room. She misses those babies. She misses the people that she serves with. And she feels like she is able to give something back during that. So she's found a connection point through serving.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's huge.
So, anyways.
Can I tell them about the third one now? Hey, the third one was give, right?
Yes, it was.
And I mean, you highlighted the church is obviously crushing this, especially from just being radically generous. And what we're able to do, in the walls, but really out in our community. But I guess really kind of the same question, but like, what is it about giving that brings that fulfillment?
Yeah. So I think there's this misconception when it comes to giving that it's only your finances that we give. And so finding ways to be generous with our giving of not just finances, but pretty much everything God's blessed us with is for a reason. I believe that He blesses us with things and stuff and abilities to bless others and to turn that back in and somehow find a way to serve them. So I think it's just finding a way to looking for ways to give, looking ways to be generous, not just at church, but everywhere you go, your neighbors. It all goes back to the bless strategy, finding ways to bless your neighbors. But yeah, I just think we just have this misconception that giving is only financial, and it is, and we appreciate that, and we are called to give financially, but I believe we're also called to give with everything He's blessed us with. So,
agreed.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
I think it did.
Okay, cool.
Well, I think it comes back to the same idea of it's getting it off of you again.
For sure.
And that's really what we're doing.
Yeah.
And for some people, the idea of giving is just like everything else. For some people, they are more inclined. They probably feel more comfortable praying. And other people, it's a little bit of a struggle, and they got to work at it, and they got to learn how to do it, that kind of thing. Same thing with serving, right? For some people, they just want to jump in there and serve. Other people, it's like takes a little moment for them to find the right spot.
Yeah.
I think giving's the same way. Some people are just naturally gifted to give and be generous, and other people, we got to work at it. It's something that's a discipline that we've got to learn. And so just because it may not be something that comes naturally to you doesn't mean it's not something that you can't grow in and become. And set small goals, take small steps to become a better giver, become more generous, whether it's with your finances or time or resources or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with giving also comes an element of trust that comes with that, because a lot of times we I think fail to give because, well, that means that I don't have it.
Right.
Financially, yes, financially speaking, but I think there's a trust level there too. Is like, if I step out here and try to give of my time or my resources or anything like that, then I've got to trust that God's going to replenish that too. And I think that kind of keeps us from doing that sometimes too.
Absolutely.
So, but
getting over those hurdles, getting over those roadblocks, and we mentioned it back in the financial series too, that giving of your finances is one area that God says, test me on. Test me and see if I don't come through for you. Test me and see if I'm not faithful
for sure.
in that. So, last thing that you gave out there for us to kind of take our focus off of what's here and put it on heaven is sharing Jesus. Which, once again, one of those statements, I probably would expect somebody in a church to say that, to share Jesus. But it's also probably one of the more intimidating things for any believer in Christ to hear is that, hey, I know, yes, I should have this responsibility and this desire to be able to share Jesus. And I do, but I don't always know how.
Yeah.
You mentioned Bless just a minute ago, and that's a strategy that we've really latched onto here at Upward. Why don't you walk us through Bless real quick?
Okay, you're going to put me on the spot now.
I am.
All right, so Bless is you begin with prayer.
That's the B.
The B, the L stands for listen. So you get to a point where you're able to listen to your neighbors. What is it? BLE, right?
Yeah, E.
So E is the one that we all like to do. We all like to eat. So, you're working towards getting together and sharing a meal, breaking bread with each other. And then there are 2 S's. So you are going to work towards serving your neighbors. Somehow, maybe they're out of town, you cut their grass, take care of their dog, whatever it is. Somebody can come take care of my dog if they want to, but and then
anytime, it doesn't really matter. Even if I'm not out of town, just take care of the dog.
That's right. And then that last S is you're working towards being able to share your story. It's not a checklist where you're like, okay, I've eaten with them, I've prayed for them, now I'm going to share Jesus. The whole point is just building a relationship, getting them comfortable enough to where you can share what God's done for you, and just share the hope that He brings. So.
You earn the right to be able to be somebody that can speak into somebody's life.
Yes.
And that's what I love about that Bless strategy is that it's not, there's no, okay, if they say this, then I'll say this or anything like that. It really is just about, hey, I'm developing a relationship with you because I care about you, and as I earn that right to be able to insert my faith into that conversation, then I will.
Yeah.
That's very good.
And awesome. I loved when you said when that person that you've invested in and you shared your faith with, when they make that decision, I mean, literally everything else in the world is meaningless. And you go, oh, it is meaningless. And that's why it felt like that. Because this is what I'm supposed to be focused on. And that was kind of the gut punch for me of like, yeah, there it is.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's huge.
I think it's a great word for us to start off this year with. Thanks for your work and your diligence in communicating that to us this past weekend. Anything that didn't make it into the message or anything that you thought about since then that you'd like to add on or share as a part of shifting our focus?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think everything made it in there.
Okay.
At least everything that needed to.
Everything that needed to. There you go. All right. Well, good job, sir.
Appreciate that.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for hanging in there with us this week. And we look forward to seeing all that God does this year, and looking forward to this weekend's upcoming message. And if you're watching this and you come in person, don't forget that we do have a new service times this upcoming weekend. We are adding a third service on Sunday morning. So that's 4 services over the course of the weekend. Thursday nights at 7 and then Sunday at 9 and 10:30 and I'm sorry, nope, 9, 10:15 and 11:30.
Yeah.
Got that. Strike that out there. And then online, if you're watching online, we'll be streaming the 9 o'clock and the 10:15 there for you as well.
Yep.
All right. So with that being said, anything that you want to throw in there, Matt?
I love you.
Oh, such a sweet guy. Oh man. All right. Well, as you can see, it's off the rails. So we'll see you later, guys. Thanks a lot.